He fired me like I was trash, tossed me aside after years of holding his company together. No severance, no explanation, just a smug grin and the audacity to say, "We'll be fine without you." He thought that was the end of my story. But what he didn't know was that those words were the spark, and I was about to turn that spark into the fire that burned his empire to ashes. And as his company slowly bled out, client by client, and I finally watched him beg me for salvation, broken, desperate, unrecognizable, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. Have you ever had a boss so entitled, so convinced of his own importance that he thought firing you would be the end of your story? Well, this one made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought I was disposable, but what he didn't know was that the entire foundation of his empire was resting on my shoulders, and when he shoved me out, that foundation crumbled. If you've ever been underestimated, disrespected, or treated like you didn't matter, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share your own sweet justice moments in the comments, because today I'm going to show you how I turned my boss's arrogance into his downfall.
In that company, which I'm not going to say the actual name, I wasn't just some intern fetching coffee. I wasn't just another name buried in a company directory. I was the guy who kept everything running. My company wasn't a giant corporation. It was a mid-sized tech firm, the kind of place where everyone wore multiple hats and a single person leaving could make the whole machine grind to a halt. And more often than not, that person was me. At late nights, that was me, hunched over glowing screens while the office was pitch black. When it comes to client emergencies, that was me, answering my phone at 2 a.m., fixing things Mark, the boss, didn't even know were broken. Even at every quiet victories, I was there, patching up messes before they ever reached his desk, making him look like a genius to the board. But here's the thing. Mark never saw me. Not really. He saw results, sure. He saw clients praising the company, and he basked in it like sunlight. But he never once said, "Good job." He never once admitted that those late nights weren't his, that those genius solutions weren't going in his head. Instead, he strutted around like a peacock. Expensive suits, smug smile, endless stories about how he was the mastermind. Meanwhile, I was the shadow behind the curtain, the one actually pulling the strings. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, one day he'd acknowledge it. But I should have known better. Because men like Mark, they don't see the people propping him up. They only see themselves standing tall. It all came crashing down one Monday morning. The office had its usual hum, the sound of keyboards, phones ringing, coffee brewing. I walked in like always, coffee in hand, ready to dive into another long week. But before I could even sit, Mark's assistant told me he wanted to see me. No warning, no explanation. When I stepped into his office, the blinds were half closed, the light harsh. He didn't even look up when I walked in. He just slid a piece of paper across the desk like it was nothing. "You're fired, effective immediately," or "with immediate effect." I couldn't quite remember the last words because my head has already gone black. My heart stopped. I remember staring at that paper, the words blurring. Fired? Just like that. I looked up, expecting some explanation, some reason. But he was smirking. He was actually smirking. "We'll be fine without you. Don't take it personally. Business is business." This word is what I couldn't forget. No reason, no warning, no severance. Just a smirk, like he was tossing out yesterday's trash. In that moment, something inside me broke. I walked out of his office numb. The buzz of the office around me felt distant, like I was underwater. My hands shook as I packed my things into a cardboard box. People glanced at me, whispered. I couldn't meet their eyes. On the outside, I stayed calm. But inside I was burning. Because Mark thought firing me was the end of my story. He actually almost ended my story that morning. But he had no idea. It was only the beginning.
That first night after being fired, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the glow of my phone lighting up the dark room. My mind was spinning, replaying every moment in that office. The smirk, the paper sliding across the desk, the words, "We'll be fine without you." Fine without me? I just keep repeating that word in my head. My chest tightened, my hands curled into fists against the sheets. He had no idea how many times I saved his company from collapsing. He had no idea how many clients called me, not him, because they trusted me to fix things. No idea how close they were to losing everything more than once, if not for the fact that I held it all together. But none of that mattered to Mark. To him, I was just disposable. Maybe he thought I was going to take his position one day with all the hard work I used to put in. That was the only thing I could think about. That night, I remember getting up, pacing the room. I felt powerless, stripped of everything I had built. There was a voice in my head whispering, "You're nothing now. He's right. You were just an employee. You'll never recover from this." But then, another voice came. Quiet at first, stronger with every passing second. "He thinks he doesn't need you? Show him. Show him just how wrong he is." The next few days were torture. I woke up without an alarm, but still at the same hour. My body was wired to work, but there was no office, no responsibilities, just silence. And in that silence, doubt crept in. What if I couldn't bounce back? What if Mark was right? I tried to distract myself. Long walks, cooking, even watching old shows. Because I put in more hours to that job, I didn't really have friends outside of work. But every time I tried to distract myself or think of something else, my thoughts circled back to the same image. The image of Mark's smug grin as he told me I was nothing. And I realized I couldn't just move on. Not after what he did. This wasn't about losing a paycheck. This was about dignity, about respect, about the way he stripped me of my worth like it meant nothing. And that I couldn't forgive. I started pulling out old notebooks, files, documents, everything I had saved over the years, notes from late-night fixes, copies of reports, client feedback that never made it to Mark's table. And that's when the truth hit me like a tidal wave. Mark didn't just underestimate me. He built his empire on my back. Maybe that was why he was scared. Or at least that was the only reason I could think of. I had the client list memorized. I knew their quirks, their frustrations, their vulnerabilities. I was the one who smoothed over the cracks whenever Mark's arrogance got too loud. I was the bridge between his ego and their patience. That day, I realized something else. Those clients didn't stay with the company because of him. They stayed because of me. That thought lit a fire inside me. For the first time since being fired, I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. Because Mark had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought he'd broken me, but all he did was free me. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not for him, not for the company, but for me. Plans, ideas, outlines, the start of something new. And as I typed, I whispered to myself, he's going to regret this. He's going to lose everything, and I'm going to be the reason why. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first brick laid in the foundation of his downfall. Because revenge isn't born in rage alone. It's born in patience. And I was more than ready to wait.
The shift came quietly, not in some cinematic lightning bolt of inspiration, but in a calm, deliberate decision one morning. I woke up, brewed my coffee, and instead of sulking on the couch, I sat down at my desk. Laptop open, notebook out, pen in hand. It wasn't if I would take revenge anymore, it was how. The first step was obvious. Clients. I knew every detail about them, their preferred meeting times, their quirks during negotiations, the ways some of them liked phone calls instead of emails, the fact that one client's CEO wouldn't sign anything without his assistant whispering the pros and cons in his ear. These weren't just clients to me. They were relationships, built over years of late-night fixes and emergency calls. And deep down, I knew something Mark didn't. They didn't trust him. They trusted me. But how do you test loyalty without tipping your hand? I started small. A text here, an email there. Just checking in, hope things are running smoothly. The responses poured in. Oh man, we miss you already. Things don't feel the same without you. Honestly, are you starting something new? Because if you are, each message was a spark, lighting the fire higher. But revenge requires patience. Too fast, and I'd look desperate. Too obvious, and Mark might catch on. So I played it cool. I spent weeks building a shell company, registering it, designing a simple, clean website, drafting contracts, and setting up a small office space with nothing but a desk, a laptop, and a coffee machine. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Every night I lay awake, my mind racing with plans. I'd scribble notes. Who to approach first? What angle to use? How to time each move so Mark wouldn't see the knife until it was already in his back. And during the day, I walked around with a smile, because Mark thought I was gone, out of the game. He thought I was finished. But really, I was sharpening my blade. The first real move came during a late-night call with one of our biggest clients. Let's call them Horizon Systems. Their COO sighed into the phone, exhausted. Things aren't the same since you left, he admitted. Issues pile up, emails go unanswered. Honestly, we're considering looking elsewhere. My pulse quickened. This was it, the opening. I leaned back in my chair, speaking carefully, slowly. Well, I'm starting something new. Small for now. But if you're looking for stability, I can promise you what you had before, only better. Silence. Then, a chuckle. You don't even have to pitch us. We're in. I ended the call and just sat there in the quiet, my heart pounding. One client down. The dominoes were starting to fall. Each week, another client shifted over. Some quietly, some with full-blown exit emails that I knew would land like bombs in Mark's inbox. And the best part? I didn't gloat. I didn't brag. I let him stew. When the first client left, I knew he'd be rattled. When the second followed, I knew panic would set in. And by the time the third walked away, his empire would be shaking on its foundations. Because revenge isn't just about winning. It's about letting them feel every second of the loss. Each night, as I shut down my laptop, I whispered the same promise. Soon, Mark, soon you'll understand what it feels like to be disposable.
The first crack appeared 2 weeks later. I was in my tiny new office, the hum of my laptop the only sound in the room, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, calm and collected. "Hey, It's Mark. For a second, I almost laughed. Mark? Calling me? His voice was strained, too controlled, like he was trying to mask the panic creeping in. Listen, I just wanted to ask, did you, talk to Horizon Systems recently? They pulled their contract, said they're moving in a different direction. I leaned back in my chair, smiling at the ceiling. His empire was wobbling, and he was reaching for me like a drowning man. I heard about that, I said, voice smooth as glass. Tough break. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then he muttered, yeah, tough break. I hung up, and the grin didn't leave my face for hours. A week later, client number 2 made the switch. A quiet transfer handled with a polite but firm email. The kind of email that says, "It's not us, it's you." That night, my inbox lit up with frantic messages from Mark. Subject lines like urgent, need to talk, call me ASAP. Each one more desperate than the last. I didn't reply. Instead, I brewed myself a cup of coffee and read them like bedtime stories, because every word reeked of fear. Then came the third blow, the one that knocked the air out of his company's lungs. Their biggest client, the one contract that practically paid half the bills. I remember sitting across from their CEO in a sleek glass conference room, sunlight pouring in. He tapped a pen against the table, eyeing me. "You know why we're here. We've worked with you for years. We never really worked with Mark. So here's the deal. We want to move everything over to your firm. All of it, starting immediately." I kept my composure, nodding slowly, but inside, my chest was on fire. My pulse thundered. When the contract was signed, I walked out of that building and into the cool evening air, breathing in the sweetest oxygen I'd ever tasted. Mark didn't just lose a client. He lost the client. By then, I knew he was spiraling. He sent me another email, this one less demanding, more pleading. "Can we meet, just to talk? I think we can work something out." I let the message sit. 1 day, 2 days, a week. Finally, I replied with a single line. "Let's meet. Cafe on 7th, tomorrow." When I walked into that cafe, I spotted him instantly. The tailored suit was the same, but the man inside it had shrunk. His shoulders sagged, his eyes had dark circles. His phone sat on the table, screen lighting up every few seconds with what I knew were more fires burning at the company. He forced a smile as I sat down. "Hey, it's good to see you." I raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" He swallowed hard. "Look, I'll be honest, things have been rough. Clients leaving, revenue dropping, but I think we can fix this. You come back, and I'll make it worth your while. Salary bump, title, whatever you want." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "Whatever I want?" His smile wavered. "Within reason." And then I laughed. Loud, sharp, heads in the cafe turned. "Mark," I said, leaning forward so only he could hear, "you fired me like garbage. You said you'd be fine without me. And now, you're circling the drain, and I'm the lifeboat." His face went pale, his lips pressed into a thin line. He had no words. I stood, slid my chair back slowly, and looked him dead in the eye. "I don't need your company. I already took what mattered." Then I walked out, leaving him in that cafe with his phone buzzing and his empire collapsing. Over the next month, the news spread. The company folded. clients gone, employees scattering to competitors. Mark's name became a punchline in the industry. And me? My firm was thriving. Each contract I signed felt like a nail in his coffin. Each client call ended with gratitude, trust, and relief, the kind of relief that comes from escaping a sinking ship. And every night, I slept soundly, because the man who thought he held all the power had been brought to his knees by the one person he underestimated most of all. When the dust finally settled, I found myself walking past the old office building one afternoon. The windows were dark, the sign out front, once gleaming, once proudly displaying the company's name, was gone. Just a blank frame left behind, like a missing tooth. I stood there for a while, remembering all the nights I spent inside those walls, the long hours, the unseen effort, the quiet sacrifices. And then, the day Mark tossed me out like I was nothing. Now that building was hollow, empty, a monument to arrogance. The company didn't really fold up, but they were forced to start from ground up like a new startup. They have abandoned their monumental, expensive, glowing building, and they have moved to a small city with little resources where they had to start again. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel regret. What I felt was closure. Here's the thing about people like Mark. They believe they're untouchable. They think titles and power make them immortal. They thought employees are a replaceable piece of trash. They thought that respect is optional. But the truth is, respect is the glue that holds everything together. Strip it away, and the whole structure crumbles. Mark built his empire on my back, but he never once acknowledged it. He never once considered that the disposable guy could be the one person keeping the roof from caving in. And when he pushed me out, the collapse was inevitable. That's the lesson here. You can't build something lasting on arrogance. You can't treat people like they don't matter and expect loyalty in return. Karma doesn't miss. It just takes its time. Did you all think I went too far with the way he treated me? Did you all think I should have just folded up and let it slide and let regret ruin my life and motivation to start again? As for me, I moved forward. My firm grew faster than I ever imagined. Those first few clients brought in others. Word spread. I hired people, good people, and I made sure they never felt like shadows. I thanked them. I credited them. I remembered every late night, every sacrifice, because I knew what it felt like to give everything and be ignored. And when I saw their smiles, when I heard their laughter in the office, I realized revenge had given me something greater than victory over Mark. It gave me freedom. So here's my advice. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been tossed aside, remember this. Sometimes being pushed out is the best thing that can happen, because it gives you the chance to build something of your own. Mark thought firing me was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning. If you've ever tasted the sweet satisfaction of karma, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, share your story in the comments, because I want to hear it. And never forget, sometimes the underdog holds all the cards.